on, Junkies? We're now watching The Last of Us at the same time as you guys, because we saw the first one. And incidental detail, just before we plough on with our review of episode 2, Maddie's boyfriend watched this, and what did he make of it?
He loved it. So my boyfriend is a big fan of the game.
Right.
He absolutely loves it. It's the only video game he's cried in. Wow. The only video game that, well, he says it's one of his favourite video games of all time.
He cried in the game?
And he plays so many games, so it's he cried in the game.
So that is a huge sort of deal.
The only video game he's cried at, and he plays them all the time.
Bloody hell. Okay.
But yeah, we watched this episode with him, and he absolutely loved it. He can't get over how accurate so many bits are.
And it doesn't ruin it for him, the fact that it's quite accurate to the game. I mean, he knows.
No, but he also said, especially this episode, there was a lot that never happened in the game, or they've completely changed.
Okay.
But he said which he liked. It didn't.
Right.
He's like, because if everything was exactly the same as the game, it would be a bit like.
Well, one of the major things I imagine that isn't like the game is the brilliant characterization of Joel and Ellie by Pedro Pascal and Bella Ramsey. I mean, I'm really impressed with Bella Ramsey.
Yeah, no, she's really good.
I think she's great. She's precocious, but she's funny, and she's cheeky, and all those kind of things.
No, they've got their relationship really well.
They have, haven't
in the
they?
game, they're such a
sort of
strong bond.
Bound unit. So this episode 2, I'm going to use the phrase. I watched it once, and then whilst I was doing the washing up over there, Kiki watched it, and I watched it. I was drawn in again, and I was reminded this is an incredibly tight episode. I thought story arc. Narrative.
It's because this episode we were kind of focusing on just the one thing, and I thought that the first the beginning sequence was so good. The bit that's set in East Asia, like the bit.
Oh
the lady
my god! Thanks for reminding me.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. No, was that Mexico? Oh no, was it Asia? No, you're right. It was Thailand or something. Yes, no, you're absolutely right. No, it was.
But yeah,
Asia.
That whole like sequence, which is not in the game at all, I thought was so good, just to tell us like how impossible the situation is, because she said the only thing we can do is bomb this city and bomb everything there.
What was so good about that older woman's performance was, I don't know if you remember, when she's telling the kind of head of the military how serious this was, and she's gone in and she's seen a dead body, and you've got the technology and the design and the concept of this tendrils coming out of the mouth. It's so well done. I can't begin to stress it. But when she realised the severity of what you were dealing with, I don't know if you noticed, there was one single shot that just slowly dollies in on her. Yeah. And she went from realising the horror, telling the horror, the horrendous solution, and realising, sobbing, and wanting to be with her family.
For the last moments.
Incredibly powerful. Very Chernobyl, I thought. That was like indie filmmaking.
It was a really good beginning sequence. And Paddy was saying, that wasn't in the game at all, but he thought it was so great. Yeah. Like both beginnings to both episodes so far have been really strong. Because the first episode was the interview about what would be the world's devastation.
Yes.
So both started with a similar thing, and they've both been really powerful so far. So
and it
from the get-go, I knew, I was like, okay, this episode's going to be good then.
Yeah. No, you're right.
It's a one-hit wonder.
You're right. It undercuts the idea of just going for horror, and I thought that's what was clever about the show. It really was a suspense builder.
It felt really realistic.
It felt really realistic.
Was really like, whoa,
real. And so they're on the road now, in a sense. Or it's not really a road, is it? It's a sort of desolate landscape.
Yeah, Tess, Joel, and Ellie to get her to the.
And there were a couple of points that were really good before we got to. Essentially, there were sort of two scenes, aren't there, with the kind of, what do you call the monsters?
The clicker zombies. They're the ones that make that noise. Yeah.
I love the detail that they gave us at one point. I think Pedro Pascal gave us it, where he says, or maybe she said, you step on some part of the fungus and it sends messages
to the other parts.
Which is like what they say in what I like about this again is the science, the research around fungal communities in woodland and forests and what have you. They have an incredibly sophisticated tendrilled kind of connection that if humans walk through it, apparently we totally disrupt that kind of communication.
Yeah, so it's such a cool detail.
Why is that? It's such an accurate detail.
Yeah, it's just amazing.
So people are fungal. A bit like Nanny Dye's foot. So I thought that was good. And then let's talk about, as they're calling it, the night at the museum, or the day at the museum. The museum scene.
The museum scene was so stressful. They did them so well. The sound, the way they moved, the way they looked.
Yeah, because
then that stress of that it's not as simple as shooting them in the head at that point, because you have to crack the fungus on the head before you.
They're so hard to kill.
Because like Paddy was saying, like the only way in the game that you're able to kill those ones is by shooting them repeatedly. Like if you use anything else, you're going to die. If you use like a smash them with a bat.
I mean, everything about it makes the Walking Dead look like a walk in the park, because you shoot them once in the head, or you get a hacksaw and hit them in the head with a hammer.
Slow.
And they're slow.
Fast.
But they
and it's
walk
just
like...
the horrible thing of like, they can't see you, they can only hear you. So you could be right up next to them, but if you're quiet, they won't react. And then as soon as you make a sound, they're like, ah! Really
original design as well. I mean, obviously not original if you know the game, but what I like about it is we haven't got another Stranger Things, A Quiet Place type thing. They're humanoid, they're humans, but their heads are sort of morphing into fungal things.
Yeah, it's so cool. And they did that whole scene so
it was excellent.
It was so well done.
But they walk like chickens.
Yeah, they're weird.
They're weird, but really unnerving.
I hate
weird.
the sound they make. It's horrid.
Really clever, really clever. So anyway, they move through that scene. We move into a new place, which I think was a library, because she has a sort of smart-ass comment said, "Do you know what books are?" to Pedro Pascal when they say, "Where are they?" And so they're in this sort of bigger building, but they're kind of, was that right? What were they running away from? Was there a scene in between?
No. So they've been in the museum bit, and then they come out, and then they walk. They make it to the place where they were supposed to drop Ellie off to the Fireflies.
That's right.
And then when they arrive there, it looks like it's been ambushed, and everybody there is dead. So they're like, "What the hell?" And then they get inside, and they can see that they're all dead and stuff. And then that's where we find out that Tess was bitten.
I know. I couldn't believe that. This is obviously a spoiler review, but I mean, that moment, and I thought that moment was managed really well, because there is a romance between them, right?
No, they're friends.
Oh, they are friends, but it felt like there was a suggestion
of something more. I think
in
this they've made it a bit more like
ambiguous.
But even then it seemed like it was just because before they leave her, she goes, "I've never asked you to feel the way I feel." So I think they were making this that she had feelings for him and he didn't like her like that. But Paddy said in the game they're strictly friends.
And so you're right. She reveals that she's kind of been bitten or marked,
she's been bitten by
in the previous in the clickers. And then this great moment of sacrifice happens.
Yeah.
Where ostensibly she
tells them to keep going.
But what I liked about that scene was how speedily Pedro Pascal went.
Oh, you'd have to, really.
But I thought that was really good, because it ended. Exactly. There wasn't some sort of elongated scene. It was like he went into, and that gives you a real inkling into his character. Profoundly pragmatic. Yeah. He's killed loads of these clickers. He knows how to save a situation, and so he's going to... I've got this horrendous feeling that he dies before the end of the series. I don't want to know if he does.
Joel?
Yes. I'm really, really frightened. Not yet. 2 minutes. And so they run off, and obviously the sacrificial moment happens. But prior to that, probably the most visceral and disgusting thing happens, where one of the clickers comes right up to her face.
Oh, yeah.
She's trying to light her thingy, and it goes in.
She's trying to set fire to the spots that go in her mouth. And she manages to do it, though. She manages to explode it.
It's like the zombie was French kissing her. It was hideous.
But Paddy was saying, in the game, that was completely different. It was the military that stormed.
Oh.
He said in the game, her death is like, you hear her shooting all of them, and then there's just this one last big shoot, and then no just silence. She got shot by them and she died. But in this, they made it that the zombies killed her, and the zombies kind of stormed the place. But Paddy said he really liked that they did it. It didn't bother him that they did it.
And I think that's clearly what the program makers are doing quite well.
But the detail was that the ones that come and attack them, like come and storm and ambush them, the zombies, are the ones that they woke up from really far away, because he damaged it. He'd like shot a root that triggered all of the ones that were further
and they
away.
were all, do you remember when they were outside on the floor? They were all they were lying on the floor like fungus.
Yeah, and they'd been avoiding that group of zombies, and then he just triggered them all. And then
very well done. Very well done. I even like, I mean, obviously they've green screened the locations, but I think they've managed
It doesn't look bad.
It doesn't look bad, but they've done something very clever where they've managed to almost maintain the computer game.
That's why. Yeah, when we were watching it, that's why I was like, it looks great, but it also still looks like a game. Which is really cool.
And it's doing the great thing in terms of the story, which Paddy's obviously saying, which is it's staying close enough to the game so that fans go with it, but it's also departing so that there's a level of
uncertainty.
Surprise.
I was really sad by Tess's death. I thought the actress that played Tess was really good.
She was great.
Paddy was a bit unsure of her in the first episode, because apparently she's really different to the Tess in the game.
Right.
But even he, by that second episode as well, he was like, he really liked her depiction.
I'll tell you who I'm looking forward to in future episodes is Nick Offerman.
Who's that?
He's the comedian. He's the one who was in My Name is Earl, the father. He's that sort of... the
dad in it.
Yeah. The really sort of... He's very funny. Looking forward to that. Anyway, tell us what you think, guys.
10 out of 10.
10 out of 10. It's sensational. Tell us what you think. Are you enjoying it? What's your score?